Welcome back to the Monmouth Basketball Hawks Nest podcast. My apologies. It's been a long time since we last spoke to you guys. I've had a lot of personal stuff, family stuff. Unfortunately, my grandfather passed away, so we spent a month kind of in and out of the hospital with him and dealing with everything with that, with family. So it's been a long month. I appreciate everyone's patience. This is definitely a therapeutic thing for me. Being able to vent and also kind of praise now at this point in the season, Monmouth basketball. So I appreciate everybody's patience, and we're back with an episode today. Mark couldn't get on today, so I do have Mike with us once again. Mike, how we doing?
Doing pretty good. And Ryan, it's great to have you back talking about Monmouth basketball. I know this is big for you, and getting back to normal. It's going pretty well. It's been warm. It's been warm out lately, and it seems like spring's around the corner, and Monmouth basketball's game seems to be getting into full bloom. So
it's definitely not very well for sure. Good. Just so you know, your the stream is buffering a little bit, so I'm not sure what will happen with that. So we are trying to have a live stream going of the game if we can. We're trying to figure out technical difficulties, how to work that out. So we're getting through that a little bit. So in the meantime, we're not going to touch on every single game because it's been well over a month, probably almost 2 months since we last talked. We last touched on the Princeton Rider trip that we made. The Rider game did not go very well. A lot of drama with the coaching staff and the Rider students. After that was at Princeton. It wound up being a blowout. We talked to Kyle Franco from the Trentonian, and he kind of expected Princeton to win, although Monmouth had a shot in that game. I think it was right before Christmas. I think I was actually putting decorations up as the game was streamed on my computer, and we lost that game 91-54. Monmouth just completely outmatched in that game. To end the non-conference schedule, they had Syracuse on the road, much tighter game. They actually looked decent against Syracuse for most of the game. 15-point loss there. Kind of expected worse. Honestly, that was almost a moral victory for the team. And then it was just two blowouts against Charlotte at home, a Conference USA team, as well as Yale at home, each one by over 30 points. And that was kind of the last time we saw this Monmouth team really just get blown out. There were a couple in the CAA here and there, but that was the last time where consistently they were just not looking like a good basketball team. They were looking like one of the bottom 5 or 10 teams in the country. And luckily, since then, even through a couple blowouts here and there, they've looked like a much more together team, and we'll get into that today. So luckily, that last stretch of non-conference games kind of ended that chapter of the season, which we were all really thankful for because it did not go great. We scheduled hard. We knew it. But that was kind of the last we saw this team struggling on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I mean, that was a tough stretch for us, really watching Monmouth basketball go through the end of the non-conference schedule where we knew we had scheduled hard and we knew it was going to be a long road just to get to CAA play, and knowing that we're moving up to a new league and that it wasn't going to be quite the drop that it would ordinarily be, regressing back to league play. So it was a situation where we're just trying to get good performances. I don't think if we looked at Princeton, Syracuse, Charlotte, Yale, like looking at them as top 150 Ken Palm teams, I believe at the time, you knew we weren't probably going to win those games, especially with how the first several games had gone to that point. But like we said, it was tough to see anything really on the floor that was salvageable as far as what you'd say. All right, well, if this particular part of the game gets a little bit better into conference play, we'll be a lot better, or we'll start stringing together wins. It was really an unrecognizable type of game from Monmouth basketball that we've become accustomed to, which I know we touched on in the last episodes we've had, and we've talked about a lot online since then. But really, that was a situation where we were just hoping to get through those with some efforts where we could point to and say, hey, maybe if we get into conference play, we could start to make some gains. I think we were probably about halfway through as bad as it was going to get before, before we would really start to break out.
Yeah, and you know what? You wonder why it changed so quickly. I mean, Kings talked about it all year. You know, it's an inexperienced team. We're one of the, I think, top 10 youngest teams in the country. A lot of inexperience. Even guys that were on the roster last year didn't get much time last year. You know, Jarvis towards the end of the year played a lot once he was healthy. Foster got his 10 to maybe 15 minutes tops per game. You know, Miles Ruth didn't play a lot last year. Vuga barely touched the floor last year. So it's all new guys and new roles. Plus, you have all freshmen. So that was going to happen. And it just took a lot longer to get kind of more organized than we believed it would take. I mean, Jarvis, we didn't know until the day before the season opener that he was going to be out for a couple months. We didn't know Jarrett Valencia was going to redshirt until the day before the season or maybe the week before. So, I mean, those are two huge blows to your team. And now you're dealing with really 10 roster players, including walk-on Jakari Spence. And thank God for him this season. I don't think we would have won as many games as we had so far without him. But you're also missing Sam Fagan and Taj Crowley, who have not seen the floor as well due to medical issues. So, I mean, we're dressing 10 guys most nights, and that's not an easy thing to do in Division I basketball. Usually you have 13 scholarships plus some walk-ons. So you have 16 guys on your bench sometimes. And when you have really 10, if anything goes wrong, there's such a small room for error. It's going to hurt a little bit. So it took us a while to get organized and these guys some minutes to figuring out their roles. And, you know, Ken kept talking about it, and he's been frustrated sometimes, but he's been patient. And he kept saying, if these guys just listen, they just play defense, it leads to offense. They just play together instead of just trying to go out and get yours, you know, good things happen. And he said the same things in the Justin Robinson year. Some nights, certain guys would start shooting too much or doing things they shouldn't be doing. And he would say the same thing back then. And he's right. But what's changed is that the defense is playing a lot better. They're holding teams to under 70 points most nights, and they're starting to score themselves in the 60s and 70s. The whole first half of the season, it was a rarity to see Monmouth in the mid to high 50s of a game. You saw a lot of games, Monmouth finished in the 30s and 40s, and at a Division I game, that's not going to get you any win. You've got to score into the 50s and 60s at least in Division I, if not the 70s. So defense is playing outstanding. They're starting to figure out ways to score. Teron Allen has been unbelievable. The first half of the year, he was barely starting games, wasn't getting a lot of minutes. And once things kind of clicked with him and he slowed the game down for himself a little bit, he's been extraordinary. And you could probably make the argument that he would have a chance at third team CAA honors at the end of the season. I don't know if he kind of started his run too late, but if he has a strong run these last 4 games through the CAA tournament, he may have an outside shot at third team. I don't know if he'll get there, but he's been a weapon for us, scoring 15, 20, sometimes more points per game in this run. And that's the leadership we needed. You know, Jack Collins did a great job first half of the year, getting a lot of shots up, scoring in the 15 and 20 point range. As a freshman, it wasn't easy on him. And now Teron Allen's taking the reins kind of. Foster's putting up 10, 15 points a game now. Clement Vuga has been extraordinary. He had 29-point game a few nights ago. We were begging him to get to 30. They were at the final media timeout, and he just couldn't get a shot after that, the way the game went, the game script kind of. But, the junior leaders are really taking over and letting those freshmen kind of develop into their roles, where we don't see him on Sandu as much anymore. Andrew Ball will get into a little bit more. He hasn't played as much. But you're seeing the older guys get a few more minutes now, and it is paying off for this team with, I guess, 5 out of 6 wins now. I mean, they're rolling right now. They're rolling. So whatever you're doing, keep going. Besides the Hofstra game last weekend, I mean, there's not really anything to complain about or criticize because they're winning with what I would call probably a bottom 3 talent team in the CAA. And that's not disrespectful to our players. That's just factual. The CAA is a really good league. We knew it was going to be a step up. So we're probably one of the bottom few teams in terms of talent, but that doesn't really seem to matter right now. We knocked off Drexel, who's a better and older team. We're knocking off some of the lower teams in the league and some of the middle teams, and they're doing just enough to win these games. And right now, it's all we need to do right now.
Yeah. And I think, Ryan, talking about defense and commitment to defense, I think the biggest thing has just been how well we're guarding the perimeter. And we've
Yeah.
been, I think in the early part of the season, coach mentioned several guys by name talking about how they needed to get better defensively. They needed to guard on ball better. They needed to box out better to get more defensive rebounds, whatever the case may be. But as a unit, they're playing a lot better. Just talking about when you play on a string and you're playing team defense, when one guy slides to the ball, the rest of the defenders around the perimeter are adjusting, and it's not an easy drive. One guy slides and you just kick it right back where the drive came from. It's everyone's pulling on a string and you're all moving together. And you look up after a few seconds of offense, and it's like, oh man, there's 10 seconds on the shot clock and they haven't even gotten a good look yet. Which that's been huge for them, because like Coach Rice always says, you play good team defense, it leads to good offense. And historically for Monmouth basketball, what that's meant is getting out and running in transition off of stops. But with this team, you have to give them a lot of credit, adjusting to what you have in terms of your roster. Like you mentioned, we're not running 13 guys deep. It's only 10 guys that are really playing. Now that Jarvis is back, call that, I guess, 11. So for us, really, it's been moving into that two big rotation now with Vuga and with Foster, which Coach Rice also mentioned how earlier in the season they had trouble, whether it was chemistry wise or just trying to figure each other out on the floor, both being on the floor at the same time together and working together. And both guys have even said it too. And now they're both playing in a two-post setup where we get that stop defensively, we get it down the floor, and we feed the paint, let both guys go to work. That's option one. Option two, once they close in from the perimeter, is get it out to Teron Allen. Let him feel the game and see how it's going, whether he's going to drive to the hoop through contact. I think in one of the games he may have broken Austin Tillman's and one record, single game and one record. I'm trying to remember which game that was, but maybe it was Stony Brook, on the road, because he must have had four and ones by himself in that Stony Brook game, and it was just coming down to the wire. It was 4-point game, 2-point game. They even took the lead by one. He's making all these plays. Whether it's a mid-range jumper or getting to the hoop. Making the free throw after he makes the layup. And he's been incredible. And then from there, once teams are keying in on him, then you get your kick out to Jakari Spencer, to Jack Collins, and they're making their jumpers and just commanding the offense. So it's a combination of making teams have to play very hard offense just to get a good shot for the full shot clock, and then on the other ends making them have to defend. So really, there's no point in the game lately in the last 6 or 7 games where the other team seems like they're in control, because Monmouth's either dominating defensively or is having their way on offense, and really is playing with an identity that was completely missing for the first 21 games of the season, which is I think that's why a lot of us are frustrated. Not only was it 20 games where you're getting blown out by 30-40 points, but it was, all right, well, like I said before, what can you salvage? And this is complete night and day difference. And Coach Rice deserves credit for that. I know he's mentioned that that he's taken more of an eye on calling more design plays, sets, running the game that way. And we know he likes to give the team a lot of freedom in terms of letting them play. We see that with just the way they run offense, that a lot of times historically for Monmouth it's unscripted, but when you have a team like this, it kind of reminds me a little bit of when we went whatever, it was 0-11 and then finally got their win at Penn in 2018-19, and then we were first place in the MAC for most of that year, getting into Diego Quinn, and how we ended up really for the first time in King Rice's tenure with a situation where you're playing in an inside out offense where you're looking for your big to do the majority of the scoring. So really, it reminds us a lot of that, where you kind of have a young team with guys that are trying to find their roles, and that's where it's important for the coaching staff to really draw up plays and put these guys in positions to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a pretty offense to watch, but it's just organized enough, and there's a game plan now, and the guys know their roles, and that's the difference. It's not, it's not Justin Robinson and Colin Stewart and Micah and Jelon and those guys banging threes everywhere and playing a beautiful game. It's not pretty, but they're organized now, and they know where the ball's going, and that's what's needed on this team.
Yes.
So, with that, we look into CAA playing, how things have kind of started so far. Now and also I want to say too, I want what's that site that does all like the advanced stats for baseball, and they'll find these crazy stats no one ever heard of before. I forget what that's called. I'll think.
Not sure what you're talking about.
Yeah, this, but I want someone to look into when's the last time a college basketball team started a season 1-20 and had like a 6 or 7 seed in their conference tournament, because that's
Are you talking about sabermetrics? Are you talking about
what?
You're talking about sabermetrics?
Something like that. There's ESPN used, I forget what it is, whatever. But yeah. I want to know, like, how many teams in college basketball history have started the season 1-20 and then gotten a 6 or 7 seed? Because if you look at how things have gone, there's an outside, not even outside, there's a decent chance at that. So, looking back into the beginning of conference play, Stony Brook was our home opener. We lose that game by 11. Drexel, higher up in the standings, are probably the 5 seed right now, maybe. Got blown out on the road in Philly. Hofstra lost by 20 on the road. Towson by 20 on the road. And we're watching these games like, man, this is rough every night going out there and getting blown out. They have a close loss to Charleston, who was ranked 18th in the country at the time. They lost by 14, but really until the last media timeout, they were right with Charleston.
That was a fun game. That was a fun game.
It was an awesome game to watch, because you're watching this team and you're like, all right, we're probably losing by 30 today. Hopefully our guys fight it out and at least keep it within reason. And they fought really, really hard until the last media timeout, when they kind of pulled away a little bit, and that's what a better team does. So that was the first kind of glimmer of hope. And then they host Hampton, who was maybe 10 ahead of us in KenPom, and we were, one of the worst teams in the country. And we get blown out at home versus Hampton. And that was kind of the letdown game you almost saw coming, because they played amazing versus the 18th best team in the country. And then they get blown out by a team that's the 340th team in the country. So it's almost like you saw it coming. They spent all their energy on Charleston, and they just didn't have that pop and urgency versus Hampton. They lose a tight one to Wilmington on the road, and they finally get the win at North Carolina A&T, beating by 15 on the road. They're currently the 6th seed, and we just swept them the other night. So that was the first time they got a CAA win, and you could see on TV how happy they were as a team for each other, the coaching staff, everybody, the fan base. Everybody could just kind of take that collective breath together. And obviously it's more stressful on the players. They're the ones living this and going through the struggles and going to practice every day and sweating your ass off and really working hard. And you're like, we got 20 losses to 1 win. Like, what are we doing this for? And, they kept believing, they stayed together. So it was really, really cool to see that team celebrate a win in the conference. And then it kind of snowballed from there. So if you want to touch on anything those first few games before we continue.
Yeah. So, Ryan, I think that Charleston game we talked about, that was a fun game. I was there. You felt like the crowd, I'll be honest, the crowd surprisingly showed up because before that, you talked about Stony Brook, Drexel, Hofstra, Towson. Again, we were in the first part of the episode I was talking about, it was going to get worse before it got better so far this season. It still hadn't seen much of that identity we spoke of that's gotten a lot better. Still haven't seen, really much of anything. And, Coach Rice mentioned in one of the games before this recent, streak we're on here, that, the players were starting to get tired of everybody dogging the coach. And, everybody talking about, how bad they were doing, et cetera. I wouldn't be too surprised if the Charleston game and how we played was a, pent up frustration. Guys just tired of hearing everyone talk about how they're the, 6th worst team in Division I. and coming out and saying you have a ranked team in your building and you're gonna give them a run for their money, right? Like, because I mean, think about it. If you're Charleston, you come into that game, like, do you think any of those guys thought it was going to be that they were going to be losing at halftime by 7 points or whatever it was, or that they'd be at the under 8 and they'd be still losing? Probably not. Like, they probably figured, all right, we got a cupcake before our next game. I think they play Austria next or something. So they probably came into that game a little flat, and kind of a perfect storm for us. And then you get a crowd that would love to get a win, much less against a ranked opponent. And credit to Monmouth for showing up and giving Pat Kelsey and his crew everything they could handle. Because I think obviously Ryan and I are not in practice every day, so we're only out here talking like fans. So if I had to speculate about what goes on just as far as preparations for the game, with whether or not certain strategies change, lineups, formations, whatever, that was around the time we saw Jakari Spence take over as a starting point guard. Am I right, Ryan, about that? I think around the Charleston. Yeah. And two, then we started seeing those changes to the lineup as far as the two bigs going at it, really being more deliberate. We hadn't seen Teron Allen really emerge like he has yet. But I think looking at that Charleston game, it's kind of letting a little bit of anger out, and then that would make sense with Hampton being a little bit of a letdown before you get to UNC Wilmington, which we only lost by 3, right? So once you get to that Wilmington game and forward, we really look like a completely different team. One that's competent, one that's playing with intention and with purpose, and is at least you can count on, right? Like, you're going to put on the game and you're going to watch it. You're going to watch a close competitive basketball game. So that's something, it's nice to see it now.
That's the whole point of people showing up too, because if you think you're going to lose by 20 as soon as you step in the building, what's the point of going to the game? Sorry, guys.
Right.
My dog's on the floor. I mean, usually I'm in the basement, but my wife's out right now, so I got my 1-year-old puppy with me, kind of giving me problems. So she's just, if you see me leaning down or telling her to shush, it's just that. It's not some imaginary person I have here. But yeah, it's definitely you need to know that going to the building as a fan that you have a somewhat of a shot to win the game or be competitive, and that wasn't happening for a while, and that's part of the reason why fans weren't showing up.
You see that?
It wasn't the losing, it was how they were losing. It was losing by 20, 30 points every night, and that's gonna turn a fan base away, and that's not. It's hard to say that that's sore loser or fair weather, because how we'll show up, the dedicated diehard fans will show up, but the casual fan is not coming to watch Monmouth when you're losing by that much. So it's not really fair weather, it's just the way sports are. When the Brooklyn Nets were at Izod Center and they were going 13 and 70 for the year, you're only going to get a few thousand fans. When they, had Jason Kidd, or they went to Brooklyn and got Durant and Kyrie, now you're selling the place out every night. Like, that's just the way sports are. Like, you can call it fair weather, but that's just how it is. The more you win, the more you're competitive, the more people are going to show up. And then luckily that's what they started doing. After the A&T win, they came home, beat Delaware by 8. That was, convincing. It wasn't really even that close. The next 2 days later, they play Drexel. Massive win. That's a top 5 CAA team. Beat them by 2 right at the end. They beat Stony Brook on the road. Tough loss to Hofstra. That was a hyped up game. I wasn't expecting to win that game, but we were hoping to be more competitive. And you could see King was frustrated in the press game post conference at the end of the game. We didn't show up that day, but then we go out and beat A&T again at home by 14. It really wasn't even a game in the second half. And we swept them for the season, the number 6 seed. So we're playing with those middle tier teams. Now, obviously, Towson's a really good team. Charleston's a really good team, and Hofstra's a really good team. So those three, if we match up in the tournament, I think we'll have a very hard time winning that game. We may be more competitive than we've been, but those are hard games. Everybody else, I'm not really that scared of at this point because we've played with all those teams. We played with Wilmington with the 4 seed. We beat Drexel the 5 seed. We beat A&T the 6. So like those middle teams we're beating or being competitive with. So
we are a 5-way tie for 7th place right now.
and so we're going to get into that in a minute. So now we're playing Northeastern right now. You see at the bottom of your screen. It's buffering a little right now, though. It's okay. We had it going for a while. So we play them. They're 4-10 in the conference. My dog's crying. Come on. We're 4-10 they're 4-10 in the conference Northeastern, 8-17 overall. Definitely a winnable game tonight on the road. Then you get your season-ending last home game with Elon. They're 7-20, 5-9 in the conference. Then you get 2 games on the road versus Hampton and William and Mary, and they're combined 8-20 in the conference. So I mean, you have a chance here if you win 3 out of 4 of these games that you could actually be the 6th or 7th seed and wear white on game day down in DC, play a lower seed, and potentially make a little run here. Now, I am not going to get ahead of ourselves. I am not going to rile up the fan base and saying this is going to be, possibly an upset year for Monmouth, and we're going to maybe make the championship game and take some. That's not what I'm saying. Let's not go there. We're 5 out of 6. That's awesome. Let's enjoy it while it's here. But I am saying if we're the 6 or the 7 or even the 8, there is a chance to win a first round game. And if you get the right matchup in the second round, there's potential to get into the semifinals. That's a difficult task, and I'm not saying it's the most likely of things, but if they're playing this way on defense, it is a possibility to win a game or 2 down in DC. And that's an exciting thing for Monmouth. When we thought, for a minute there, I mean, I think we had this talk in the group chat, 1-31 was on the table. I mean, I think most Monmouth fans, I think it's hard to argue that was a possibility. I mean, the way we were losing games, or like who can we beat if we can't beat Hampton? And luckily they turned it around, and that's not the case this year. And they've won 5 out of 6. So now you hope they can win, 8 out of 10 or somewhere around those lines, and maybe they finish the season strong as a high seed, and you see what happens in DC. But either way, it's a positive thing. We'll get into this more in a minute. It's a positive thing to be winning these games at the end of the season. Nobody wants to go 1-31, 2-30, and have your season end like that. So it is a positive all around. Happy for the players, and I'm hoping we can keep this going tonight.
Yeah, definitely. Everything you said is right, Ryan. Like you want to put yourself in a position now in these last couple of games, like you said, to be either a top seed line. But I think even more simply than that is just it's a difference between getting a game that it's a coin toss, whether you can win or lose, versus getting a game against Charleston, Hofstra, or Wilmington, where it's you're looking at being a 15-point dog. So that's really something exciting to play for these next 4 games for Monmouth. Right. And like we said, it's a breath of fresh air. It really is to see them playing the type of basketball that you would that's appointment viewing and that you would want to make time to watch. Because this is all right. With college sports, I feel like and this is a very pro sports part of the country, and I recognize that. Right? We live in the middle of New Jersey, but this is one of those things that if I could just help people contextualize the difference between pro sports and college sports in terms of like a bad season, right? Like everything is cumulative in college, right? This isn't the NFL where you get well, if your team sucks one year, you get a draft pick, you get free agency, there's a salary cap, you could basically hit reset, and in 2 years,
that way
you go from being a 2-14 Giants team to being in the playoffs or Super Bowl contender. Everything in college is cumulative. So if you stink, it matters if you are 10-20 bad or 1-31 bad. All right, like it all matters because the type of athlete you get the next year is contingent upon the type of exposure you're getting year in and year out, right? Whether you have a a rebuilding team and there's, half the building is full, right? Like you flip a recruit flips the game on, is watching and they say, oh, that arena looks really nice. Oh, there's actually people there. Like people care about this team. That looks and presents a hell of a lot differently than, oh, well, that place is a dungeon. Clearly nobody cares about his team. Oh, they're really bad. That all matters. So that's why, I know, I think we all got into a little bit, online talking about the slump we were in the beginning of the season. But that's why I think that's why it bothered a lot of us so much to see that not only were we struggling, but we were struggling as mightily as we were. And again, don't want to harp on it, but we're glad to see that we're doing a lot better now, and that whatever the difference was, and we talked about exactly how much better they're playing. We're glad to see that, because we're enjoying this, right? Like I'm excited that it's the middle of February and I get to watch some meaningful basketball on a Thursday night, right? Like that's exciting, and so we all love that. Everybody who loves Monmouth basketball wants that. So really, we're all excited, and like Ryan said, that doesn't make somebody a front runner if it annoys you that that your team's not good, and you wish they were good, whether it's because you got season tickets or you already bought tickets months in advance for the game, and you're looking forward to it, you're excited. We all want to be huge Monmouth basketball fans, and we all want the team to be good and be like a major part of our lives. So that's really my 2 cents on like why it is so important for us to play respectably even when we're bad, and to be playing really good basketball and in good games that are ones you'd want to make time to watch late in the season.
Right, because when you're 1-20, you start thinking about, number one, it's a lost season. Number two, which we kind of knew. We knew it was a rebuild year coming, losing 5 seniors. It was going to be a rough year either way. No, calm down. Now it's getting fired up at the moment. We'll talk now. So you start wondering, like, what kind of recruit is going to want to come to this team? And now you're thinking about next year, like, okay, well, are the juniors, the few senior, well, we really only have 1 senior, but are the juniors in this team going to leave next year because we had this awful season? And then who from the portal and freshmen are going to want to come here? You start worrying about stuff like that as a long-term thing. So, thankfully now you see the team, although the record is going to be a 20-loss season, you see now, okay, well, they finished the year strong, winning 8 out of 10 potentially, and they have this nice arena. They have a good coach and play with a contract. He's not going anywhere anytime soon. And then, you start seeing like, okay, maybe they're only 1 or 2 pieces away. They have Jarvis, they have Collins, they have Teron Allen, they have some of these guys ready to go. And maybe I'm the missing piece. You say, oh, they upset somebody. They got to the quarters, the semis. All right, maybe me and my buddy come from either, North Jersey school or somewhere in New York, and like, all right, we're the missing piece of this team. Let's go to Monmouth next year and go win the CAA, or maybe in 2 years. So, that it matters. Like, these games do matter, even if it's not quite for this year to win a championship and get a top 3 or 4 seed, because that's out of the picture now. But it's just looking towards next year and seeing, number one, what can this team salvage this year and what can they accomplish? How far can they take this thing? And also, who is going to want to come to us next year and say, all right, Monmouth is not a lost cause just because they had 1 bad year. Pieces in place. Let's go there and try to win there with King Rice. So it is important. These do matter for that as well.
Definitely.
So just going over quickly how the stats have changed a little bit. You look in just CAA play. In the beginning of the season, you saw Sandu got a lot of minutes. Collins was getting a crazy amount of minutes. He was barely off the floor. All these guys had kind of weird minutes in the beginning. And now you see Foster's our leading scorer in CAA play with 12.6 a game. Collins went down from his 15, 16 a night. Now he's at 10, but he had a couple weeks. He had a tough stretch in there. I think teams are kind of keen in on him a little bit. And now that Teron Allen is taking over, he's averaging 8.9 in CAA play. But if you look at the second half of CAA play, that's closer to 15 a game. So now Tehran's doing his thing. Vuga's taking over, scoring 10 points a game now, plus. Now Collins can kind of play off the ball a little bit more and not have so much pressure on him. And that's helping Jack Collins see the floor as well. He had a couple of bombs the other night. One was definitely beyond NBA range. That was probably around 30 feet out, the one he took the other night and drained it. But, it matters for these young guys that the older guys are stepping up and they don't have to take on that massive leadership role where they can just be freshmen and just go out there and play and learn the speed of D1 basketball. And that is helping these guys out. You're not really seeing Jaden Doyle. You're not seeing Monsandu. Holmstrom and Ruth are playing a little bit less now. And King's kind of figured out the recipe for how to get this team across the finish line in the best spot possible. So it's definitely a different rotation than we saw the first half of the year, but I do think it's for the best. And you got to give King Rice credit. I mean, you got to give him credit for what's going on right now because, you look at this team in terms of inexperience, in terms of talent, in terms of, where they were coming out of high school and even last year, they're definitely in the bottom of D1 for overall talent and depth. And he's got them in the middle of the Colonial right now. So, I mean, you got to give Rice a lot of credit for what's gone on the last few weeks.
Yeah, isn't it interesting too, Ryan, how we've been playing so much better, even though we're really playing primarily 5-6 guys, 30-ish minutes. Yeah. It's like you would think that the key to a team like us who's really thin playing better late in the year would be that you're getting production from 1 through 10. And it's no disrespect to anybody, but that's not what's happening. Right. It's really been a couple key guys that are stepping up and really making their mark. So it's good too, because most of them are coming back, even though, like we said, there's probably expected to be some level of turnover just with day and age we're in with college basketball, with the transfer portal and all of that. So I mean, would expect to see some of that. Ryan, do you want to get into that yet or not? Is that the separate conversation for a separate day?
The portal? Yeah. I think we're going to save that for the end of the season. I don't want to ruffle feathers midway, especially during a winning streak we got going on right now. I think that's going to be a postseason conversation, kind of what should happen with the portal and our opinions and, who stays, who goes, and what our takes are on the roster. I think we just kind of enjoy this ride for now, and then in March we can start talking about next year.
Yeah, and I think, and kind of to Ryan's point, like when that day comes, and it eventually will. I mean, you could look no further than football on our own campus, where we started out the season with a really strong prospects entering the CAA. We look awesome at the beginning of the year. We're a bubble playoff team, right? For the FCS, we have a couple heart-wrenching losses, and by game 8 or so out of 11, the season's really like over, and you're playing games that won't impact whether or not you're going to make the playoff. And it's the reality, right? The team, players start transferring, players start evaluating their options. So it's not like anyone's saying, somebody should transfer because they stink. Like, that's not what it is. It's that it has to be a mutual fit in both directions, right? Coaches have to have a vision for where that player is going to fit into their lineup and their roster, going forward. And it's the same thing for the player. It has to be what they want. So there's a lot of mutual agreement that goes into it. It's really not so much an indictment of a particular player, whether or not they're any good, or they're or whether or not they're a good kid, or anything like that. It's has everything to do with what the coach's vision is, what they need from that position and that player, and what that player wants for their own career, personally, professionally.
Right, no doubt. You want to get into Flow Sports, other sports?
Yeah. Right. I can't see the clock. How much time have we been recording for? I can't even see.
We're almost at 40 minutes, so maybe another 5 minutes, and we'll get out of here.
All right, cool. Yeah, so let's talk a little Flow hoops and talk a little Flow contract. I think so. Just to kind of lay the groundwork for everybody, when we were in the MAC and the Big South, respectively, right? We had a contract with ESPN for our school, and some of you may remember, if you've been around long enough, that back in 2014, Monmouth, when streaming really first began in earnest, Monmouth was the first. I don't know if it was first mid-major or first Division I school period to have a entirely student-produced on-campus broadcast capability where they were going to feed games directly into ESPN. And they were going to be streaming. At the time, it was called ESPN3, and that was where we made our mark, and it was a pretty cool recruiting tool for us for a little while. And that became the whole MAC ended up getting on-campus production facilities by, I think it was 2017, and it was really a nice thing that when you were watching your team play MAC basketball, that you could count on you were getting a ESPN stream broadcast. By that point in time too, every other mid-major was throwing their games on ESPN as well. So really, for the most part, 90% of college basketball and football was playing streaming on some form of ESPN, whether that's digital, right, through the ESPN app, or Watch ESPN, ESPN Plus, or whether that was linear through ESPNU, ESPN2, the real TV, right, cable. So that's just a little bit of a backdrop. That's kind of the standard to what we've been accustomed to is being able to watch everything on ESPN. When we knew we were going to be moving to the CAA, they had this contract with Flow Sports, which we're watching right now. And Flow is also an over-the-top streaming service like ESPN Plus. But really the difference is if you hadn't heard of Flow before Monmouth moved to the CAA, there's probably a reason for that, because there's nothing else on here. You can see in the corner of this pane here, I don't have it maximized. The other games that Flow is offering today besides the CAA are UW Parkside versus Northern Michigan men's basketball, and PNW, I don't know what that is, versus Michigan Tech basketball.
Not the one.
It's not. We're not exactly talking about partnering complementary brands here. So, with that said, right, we joined the CAA, and knowing that they had a contract with Flow Sports that was in its final year of duration, and that there's always the option that we could go back to ESPN as a conference, whatever it may be, right? The CAA had a agreement too with CBS Sports. It's why some of the games are put on CBS Sports. John Fanta and John Rothstein do a great job with some of those broadcasts, and so there were options. Really, the biggest one is ESPN, and it was announced last week that the CAA, for the next term of their media rights contract, was going to go with Flow, basically renew the setup we have now, and it was going to be, they called it an 8-figure payout for the conference as far as media rights deals go. And I think a lot of this is common sense, right? So there's two things, right? There's the information we don't know, right? Because we don't work for the conference, we don't work for the school, we don't work for the network. So we don't want to speak ignorantly on numbers and facts and figures that we don't know. So what we don't know, we're left to assume based on what you can picture with information that surrounds. And Flow Sports is paying out 8 figures to the CAA through their next media rights deal. You divvy that amongst it'll be 14 basketball playing schools next year, Ryan, right?
Yeah.
With Canada, 14 basketball playing schools, 15 football playing schools, 9 of which overlap. And that, whatever that 8 figures is, probably going to be on the low range of 8 figures. It gets whittled down pretty quick. And with that said, you kind of look at how much money is Monmouth University specifically going to be getting from this deal, right? We don't know, right? So but you can kind of figure, you can do some ballpark math based on the fact that there's not a whole lot of demand for Flow Sports out there, so we don't really know what they could really be pulling in as far as what they're going to be, as far as what they can distribute to the flagship conference that they're broadcasting sports to. I tweeted about this a little bit when it came out, just talking about what it means for the league. And Well, what I would hope is that, there's a pretty big sum of money that, we're getting paid. Just based on everything we said, it probably is not the case. And if I had to guess, I would say that, most of what we're getting paid is just the subscription revenue that they're taking in from folks like us who are paying, what is it, $90 a year to watch games on Flow Sports. And, I think the concern, especially for somebody like me, who cares so much about Monmouth sports, is that, great, we're probably getting paid more than we would get paid from ESPN because they have other properties to worry about, like all the other conferences. With that said, like, it significantly hurts the viewing experience to not be able to look at a Monmouth basketball game and tell somebody, oh, they're playing Northeastern tonight, it's on ESPN Plus. Right, if Monmouth gets going, and we both of us, we invite people to games, all our buddies know that we love Monmouth, and it hurts the brand when you have a team that's playing well, and somebody asks, oh, what channel are they playing on, and you tell them they're playing on Flow Sports. That kind of it's like, oh, okay. And now with that said, there's one part of this I do want to mention, because the school has done a great job with this, is one of the caveats that makes Flow a little bit more beneficial is that they have some flexibility in terms of what they'll allow us to negotiate as far as regional sports networks. So like if you're watching a game on SNY or NBC Sports Philly, that's not a feature that we had under ESPN. With ESPN, it was all up to the company itself as far as what games were going to get flexed. You guys probably remember some of the games we would have on ESPNU. That's all based on the major network, and not what we're able to individually negotiate ourselves. So that's a nice thing that, like, at least you could say, all right, well, we're going to be playing on SNY or on NBC Sports Philly if you live in South Jersey or Philadelphia. So that's helpful. Just with that said, we're a university that joined the CAA, becoming a national university as far as those types of rankings are concerned. And it's helpful to be able to get on into TVs across the country where everybody has ESPN Plus. Because that's really the go-to, right? They broadcast everything. They have not only the rest of the college sports world, but they got UFC, they have NHL, MLB, even NFL games, NBA. Like there's a lot that brings somebody else into ESPN Plus besides just college sports. So it does hurt a little bit just as far as the upside of what Monmouth can get from an exposure standpoint. But I think we would be ignorant to say we know it all, especially since we don't have official facts and figures as far as revenue. But like we said before, like you can kind of connect the dots if you're looking at what else is on Flow Sports and what a company like Flow Sports could possibly be capable of paying the CAA. So Ryan, I know I spoke a lot there. Probably should come up for air. You have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, not really. I mean, it's not ideal. I mean, I do like once in a while being on SNY or CBS or things like that. But I mean, as a whole, ESPN is just so much more accessible. When you get ESPN, you pay the 80 or 100, whatever it is per year, but you're getting so many games from Division I and on. You're getting different sports. You're getting documentaries. There's so much on ESPN Plus. You're getting, when you get that, you also get extra articles too on ESPN. So you get March Madness info, different, behind the paywall types of articles and takes from analysts and stuff like that, extra data. So you get so much when you get that ESPN package. And Flow Sports is like, all right, I can watch my team play and that's it. Like I can watch my conference play and there's nothing else. So I mean, it's definitely not fan friendly. I'm not. It's the one reason the CAA I'm not a fan of joining the conference. Everything else I'm on board. Like it's a better conference. Yeah. I mean, everything about it is better. But besides being in DC versus AC, I like the AC a lot more for the tournament. I'm hoping actually the MAC loses AC and picks Siena again, and then we could potentially take over from the Colonial. Because if you think about it, I mean, I don't know how it draws in DC. I can't imagine a whole lot better than AC. But if you think about it, it's still a central location because you think about Charleston, North Carolina being the southern teams, and then Northeastern and Boston being the northern team. And then you get Monmouth, Delaware, Drexel, Hofstra, all within a couple hours of AC. It's not the worst location. And really, DC is only about 2 hours or so south of here. So I'm actually holding out hope that we can eventually be back in AC for the Colonial. I don't know if that's a long shot. I'm hoping, but yeah, full sports obviously isn't ideal, but we're kind of living with it for now. And then hopefully in a couple of years, maybe contract runs out again, and less people buy it, and we can move on from it. But tough half for Monmouth there. They're down over 20 at the half. This should be an interesting post-game press conference from King Rice today. They played a great game the other day, and then before that, he wasn't happy after the Hofstra game. So this should be an interesting second half and post-game with this one. They don't seem like they're totally together tonight. A lot of turnovers going on right now from what we can see, 43-22. But we'll see what they can do, and see if they can turn this around tonight. To go for a massive comeback here. So just quickly, the last minute or two, touching on some other sports. Women's basketball getting the job done in the Colonial. 12-12 overall, 7-6 in the Colonial, above 500. That's an awesome job by them so far, even including a win over number 1 seed Drexel, who's pretty much a lock to make the tournament. That's just a huge win for the program. But they're doing the job. I mean, Coach, I always say her name wrong. Is it Bogus?
I think it's Bogus. I think it's Jim Bogus.
Yeah. Coach Bogus is getting the job done, and I liked that hire from the beginning. Penn State coach. I think she's been awesome so far. A lot of good things to say about her. I'm hoping to eventually get her on the show. But she has been outstanding so far. So kudos to the women's team. Keep it going, ladies, and hopefully, you guys can advance in DC and hopefully, make a run at this thing this year. Mike, you got anything else?
That's a big thing too for them because their jump from the MAC to the CAA was incredibly high. I think when you looked at some of the rankings, I can't keep track of all the different outlets that rank all of the different sports in their conferences, but as far as the rankings for women's basketball go, I think, and somebody will correct me, I'm sure, but I think the MAC was in the 20s, and the CAA was, I think, the 9th ranked women's basketball conference in the country last year. So to go from one to the other is quite stark, and with a lot of the same roster too. When you look at some of the players of the team, like a lot of the major producers are some of the same girls who were in the rotation last year. Lucy Thomas, Casey Donovan. They're a lot of the same faces that are playing better. Brianna Tinsley's been a huge factor for them too. She's been leading from the point guard spot. So they've got something working for them this year. It's going to be exciting to see what they could do towards the end of the season and even getting into the tournament. Just because like you said, you beat Drexel, who is a really high quality women's basketball team. And that's gonna bode well for them, especially locally recruiting. If you know about women's basketball, the Shore Conference is one of the hotbeds of women's basketball, in the nation. So that's exciting, to see that maybe you start getting some of the players that go from Manasquan, from RBC, RFH, that go to Notre Dame and UConn and every other school that you could think of at the national level. Get some of them coming down the shore and staying home, and playing for Coach Bogus in West Long Branch. So
right, even if you lose the number 1 player like Mabry, maybe you get the number 2 player that could have gone to the A10 or somewhere like that, but they stay home for the CAA and stay down maybe a conference. So maybe you get the minus level player instead of the A+, and it's a huge recruiting win for Monmouth. Yeah,
even on this roster alone, they got they have I think I want to say 3 or 4 Shore Conference alumni on this team.
They got a few,
yeah. So I mean, I don't think that's a coincidence that they're playing so well now. and against even better competition. They're doing a great job. They had I think as far as all of Monmouth sports go, they probably had the biggest jump from the MAC / Big South to the CAA. So kudos to Coach Bogus and the team.
No doubt. All right, I think we're pretty much ready to get out of here. We're at 55 minutes. I think our time is up here. Mike, thanks for coming on as always. We are finally back again. Apologies for the long wait, guys. It's been a long couple months for me, but we are back. We will have my dog's going crazy. We will have at least one more previewing the Colonial Tournament. We'll try to get one in before that, but that might be our next one previewing the tournament. And then obviously we'll do one throughout the postseason and after the postseason. So we'll be with you guys all the way on Facebook. Follow Monmouth Podcast on Twitter. I got stuff going on during the games and throughout the week on there. So make sure you check that out. But in the end, thank you guys for always listening, being great supporters. Make sure you get out to the game Saturday, 2:00 versus Elon. And hopefully the Monmouth Hawks can finish their home season with a win and then 2 more after that. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and have a good night. See.